My name is Minda Rodriguez. During Advent, we are called to be prepared to meet Jesus, either at his birth on Christmas morning, his coming at the end of time, or at the end of our lives. Pope Benedict XVI says, Advent reminds us that sin is defeated in the Messiah who came into the world at Christmas and who will come again. One commentary that I read challenges each of us to receive Eucharist, to have our hearts prepared every time we receive. Every time we receive Eucharist. So I challenge you, ask you, what did you do this evening to prepare your heart to receive Jesus in the Eucharist? According to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, we are given the directive of John the Baptist to decrease so that Jesus may increase. It is absolutely no mistake that the season of Advent begins as our days are growing shorter and our nights are growing longer. And just after we reach the shortest day of the year at the winter solstice, we are prepared to celebrate Christmas. If we have lived Advent well, we have descended into the darkness, and with Christmas, we are given the light of the world in the birth of Jesus Christ. Here in the United States, we think of Advent as starting Sunday right after Thanksgiving. And I can remember in the hustle and bustle of Thanksgiving and going to church on the way home trying to find 4 candles so we could pull the Advent wreath out, dust it off, and get it going. But it occurred to me that, you know what, not every country in the world celebrates Thanksgiving like we do. So what's the official date? How does the church know when Advent starts? It starts on the Sunday that's nearest the feast of Saint Andrew. Pope Francis once said, Advent invites us to a commitment to vigilance, to look beyond ourselves, expand our mind and our heart, and to open ourselves up to the needs of people, of brothers and sisters, and to desire for a new world. During the last week of September this year, I was called to look beyond myself. I went to spend the day with our daughter Maggie and her 2 teenage boys because her husband, their dad, had been admitted to the hospital with COVID. I ended up staying 2 weeks. Our lives changed quickly. I opened my heart to the needs of this family. That included our son-in-law, Mike. While I was there, Mike was placed on a vent. He became unresponsive, and he was not capable of preparing himself to meet Jesus. Mike was in the COVID intensive care unit at a Springfield hospital, and their rules would not allow clergy in to minister to Mike. So, Maggie and I were challenged with preparing him to meet Jesus. It's no mistake that last summer I attended 2 talks that helped me prepare Mike for the end of his life. Mike was in his early 50s. He was tall. I'd call him a burly man, healthy, and he contracted COVID. He was very well known in their small farming community. He was a volunteer fireman and a volunteer EMT. If there was a community project that needed to be tended to, Mike was there. He was rarely the organizer. You might call him the worker bee. Mike loved the outdoors, especially hunting and fishing, a love he introduced to Maggie and their sons. I stood by our daughter's side throughout this ordeal of saying goodbye to life as our family would know it. Mike entered the hospital because he was struggling to keep his oxygen levels up. Our family, including many of you in our Cursillo community and those wonderful prayer partners that you got to see a glimpse of earlier, we prayed like never before that the hospital stay would be short and Mike would return to good health. Mike survived 7 days after being placed on the vent. Maggie and I, as we read from the book of the prophet Isaiah, like John the Baptist, we entered into a desert experience. Not only were we helping Mike to prepare to meet Jesus, we were also preparing our hearts to accept God's will. At Mike's bedside, God changed Maggie's heart. At the beginning, it was my will. She begged God to save her husband. But in that 7 days, God changed her heart so that she could say, "Thy will be done." Standing in the COVID ICU, we felt God's presence. I knew I was standing on holy ground. We knew Mike would never be the man he was before entering the hospital. I was able to lay my hands on Mike's chest and pray, "Lord, into your hands we commend Mike to you." I prayed more decades of the Divine Mercy Chaplet than I can even remember. I begged God to have mercy on Mike's soul, to forgive him of all of his sins, to take him to heaven. I asked Jesus, Mary, and St. Joseph to give Mike a peaceful death. I prayed that at the end of his life he would hear the word that we all long to hear. "Well done, good and faithful servant." I also gave Maggie support during this time of waiting and watching. And she was never without her phone by her side. Neither she nor I slept a lot because we just knew we might miss a phone call. At one point, Maggie was asked to consider taking Mike off the vent. It was then that Maggie very selfishly gave up some of her time at Mike's bedside and asked if Mike's 3 brothers could come to say goodbye to their brother. Now, I have to tell you, when we would enter the hospital at Springfield, there was a huge sign that said, "1 visitor per patient, no exceptions." Unless you've got God who will open the door. That hospital broke a few rules, and not only was I allowed to be in there with Maggie, so were Mike's 3 brothers allowed in to say goodbye. Maggie, again, stepped out of herself and opened her heart and let close friends and family say their goodbyes while using FaceTime. She gave her sons, who are 16 and 13, the opportunity to say goodbye. They chose not to FaceTime, but they did speak their goodbyes to their dad as Maggie held her phone close to his ear. The day that Maggie was supposed to turn off the vent, well, Mike was having a good day and she just couldn't do it. It was then that the Holy Spirit again spoke to me and gave me words. I once again looked beyond myself and I asked Maggie, "Do you think we should pray that God will spare you from having to make this decision to turn off the vent. So we began our prayers that if God was going to take Mike, just do it while he's on the vent. God was so gracious. He gave Maggie 7 days to prepare. 7 days to change her heart. 7 days of a wild and crazy roller coaster ride that at times we prayed would not end. In the last 5 days of Mike's life, we rushed to the hospital 4 times. Maggie lives about an hour away from the hospital. Each time our guardian angels surrounded our car and gave us safe travel. Each time we got to the parking lot, there was one parking space right up front. God was with us. God was showing us the way each step. At the funeral, their pastor said that you can either choose to say goodbye to Mike, or you can choose to say, see you later. I'm still able to support Maggie. I spend 2.5 days with her each week as she adjusts to life. We are confident that God has a plan, and we trust his plan. We don't know what that plan is, but we still trust it. We continue to prepare our hearts to meet Jesus so that we can see Mike again. Just 1 week after Mike's funeral, God gifted us with a double-wide, horizon to horizon rainbow right over their home. One of Maggie's sons says he has seen Mike. So we reminded her son, your dad's going to be watching out for you. Just this last weekend, as Maggie sat in the deer stand with one of her sons, a family of cardinals flew in. The male cardinal stayed and stared at her. She said hi to Mike. God's watching over each of us. His grace is sufficient if we only realize it. During this season that we call Advent, we are called not only to open our hearts, but to open our eyes, open our ears, to look for Jesus. How are you going to allow Christ into your heart this Advent? My prayer for each one of you is that each of us will welcome the Christ child on Christmas morning, and every morning after, we will ask Jesus into our hearts. From the Gospel of Luke, we are told to be vigilant at all times and to pray that you have the strength to stand before the Son of Man. Advent's not practice. It's not a drill. It's not a rehearsal. Advent is the real deal. Advent is life. Live it well. Live it with Jesus. Because if we do, we'll all be able to say, see you later.